Well, following yesterday's Super Tuesday results and the withdrawal of Nikki Haley from the Republican race, former President Donald Trump appears all but assured to face a rematch against incumbent President Joe Biden. As the eighth-month slog toward the general election vote now kicks off, what can we expect from the upcoming campaign that serves as a referendum on the Biden administration's handling of issues including inflation, Israel, immigration, and the sanctity of human life? Joining me now to discuss this and much more, Senator Pete Ricketts from Nebraska. He serves on 3 Senate committees, including the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Senator Ricketts, welcome back to the program. Great to see you.
Thank you very much for having me on.
So let me first get your reaction to Super Tuesday's results.
Well, it's very clear the voters have spoken. They've said Donald Trump is our nominee, and now it's time for all of us as Republicans to rally around Donald Trump to be able to beat Joe Biden. This whole weekend of Bernie's thing at the White House has got to end. We got to have real leadership, somebody who knows how to address the pressing issues we've got in our nation, someone who has got a demonstrated track record, for example, of closing the border. Donald Trump brought border crossings to a 45-year low, where Biden has allowed our border to be completely open. And also, we've seen the huge inflation under Joe Biden, the reckless spending. And we know Donald Trump will address those and show leadership there, as well as project strength on the world stage. So it really is time for everybody in the Republican Party to get behind Donald Trump and make sure that we beat Joe Biden in November.
So let me take on a couple of those issues. Are you surprised that immigration has risen to the #1 issue at the forefront of voters' minds?
Well, if there's a surprise there, it's because the mainstream media has not been covering this issue. So it's not become the #1 issue because the mainstream media is all over. It's just the opposite. They refuse to cover many of the important things that are going on there. I'll just give you one example. President Biden is abusing an authority he has called parole that allows him to bring foreigners into our country. Under the Obama and Trump administration, this happened about 5,600 times a year. Last year, Joe Biden let 1.2 million illegal aliens into our country using the parole function, including Jose Ibarra, who's been accused of killing Laken Riley, the young Georgia nursing student who was just killed. He was let into this country on this parole program, and now we have these horrible consequences. And this is not the only case. It's not
Right.
the isolated case.
In fact,
it's got people mad.
In particular, in that case, and we're going to explore this a little bit later with Texas Congressman Gooden, that was facilitated by an NGO that was receiving federal money, apparently. So we have money facilitating those coming into this country illegally to do harm to American citizens. And I think you're absolutely right. It's not happening because the media covered it, but because they didn't cover it. And so that raises another question. The media, the legacy media that's out there, does this show that they've lost their impact on the American people because they cannot be trusted?
Well, I think that it does show that their credibility is very low, and that's why people go to other sources to be able to find out their news. I mean, if we're all wondering why young people especially are going to Twitter to get their news, it's because the media is doing such a poor job of presenting the information that we need as citizens to be able to make good decisions with regard to holding our government accountable. And this issue at the southern border is just one example, but we all know that the media is biased far, far, far to the left. They only report it from their perspective, and people get frustrated with that, and so they go look other places.
Yeah. Let's talk. You mentioned out of control spending. So the House just voted to pass 6 of the funding bills. This is a big package, $468 billion. It had tepid support among Republicans in the House. I mean, is this business as usual?
Well, unfortunately, this business has become all too usual. Our regular appropriations process would have us pass all these bills individually and do it before September 30th. That hasn't happened since 1997. That's how broken this system is. And in this case, the Senate Appropriations Committee passed out all 12 of their bills in June and July, and Chuck Schumer sat on them. We didn't take our first votes on them until November 1st, a full 30 days after the end of our fiscal year. And then we voted on 3 of them that were lumped together. And he hasn't allowed us to take another single vote on any one of those since November 1st. It's just a terrible example of how Chuck Schumer is gaming the system for his own personal aggrandizement, his power, so he can write these bills, and really not allowing our system to work the way it should be. And if we're going to get our spending under control, we've got to have a regular system where we can vote on these bills individually, offer amendments, but that is just not happening with Chuck Schumer.
All right. So, I mean, people are sitting down and saying, how can one man stop 99 other members of the Senate? You're elected by all the people of Nebraska. You got 2 senators from Nebraska. Every state's the same. How is it that the system has allowed one man to have so much control, and how do we fix that?
Yeah, it didn't used to be that way. The power in the Senate was much more dispersed before to committee chairs. When you had a leader, they would generally be respectful of what the committee chair had done with regard to their bills. But that's not been the case with Chuck Schumer. He has totally consolidated power, and his members allow him to get away with it. The Democrats have the majority in the Senate, so they elect Chuck Schumer, and Chuck Schumer then gets all the benefits of being leader, which means he basically dictates not only to us, but to them as well. And, I do feel that there are Democrats who want to see a change in this, but they're all afraid of Chuck Schumer. He rules them with an iron fist, and so they don't step out of line. You'll notice they vote very uniformly. They're very disciplined. We've got to have a change. We will have an opportunity with our new Republican leader in the elections we'll have in November to start working on how we reform the system.
So first off, people have to go vote. Republicans will have to gain control of the Senate, have the majority so that they can then lead forward. Will the Republicans do it differently in terms of moving it back to the way it should be, where every senator has a voice in the process? I mean, it's got to be frustrating for you. I mean, you were a governor. You know what it's like to actually run something. And here in the United States Senate, you're deprived of the voice and the vote that the people of Nebraska have given you.
Yeah, as governor, we kept the growth of government to 2.8% a year, and we had a regular appropriations process to be able to do that. My hope, and this is what I'll be looking for when I talk to the candidates who want to be our next leader, is that we will go back to a regular appropriations process, have that commitment to do all 12 individually, and be able to offer amendments as one of the ways that we can go back to a regular order in the Senate. And of course, that will depend upon us taking the majority in this election cycle. But we've got a lot of great candidates and a lot of great pickup opportunities in different states. So I'm very excited about the opportunity that we as Republicans will be able to lead the way on how we can reform the system and bring it back to the way it used to be.
Senator Ricketts, without reforming the system, we're going to continue right now we're on track every 100 days adding another $1 trillion to our nation's debt. I mean, I don't foresee that changing unless we change the way Washington, D.C. operates.
Well, Tony, you have hit upon something that apparently most folks around here haven't gotten, which is if you want a different result, you got to have a different process. Again, being a governor, we were all about good process, and that's what we have to have here in D.C. We've got to start fixing the system if we're going to get different results, because we've known for the last 26 years, if we do it the same way, it is not going to work. So we got to have a new system. We got to try things differently to get our handle on this spending, because as you point out, we've got almost $34 trillion in debt. It's like having a second mortgage on every family in this country. We got to get that fixed. We got to get it under control.
Yeah, well, I'd like to see more senators like yourself, former governors, chief executives that have had to actually balance budgets, and business people who know how to make things work as well. Senator Rick, it's always great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Great. Thank you very much for having me on.